After the Buddha's death, his teachings quickly spread across North India and far beyond. Memories of the wise teacher transformed into a cult centered on honoring his image, venerating sacred relics, stupas, and holy trees. Buddhism became one of the most widespread religious movements because it spoke to everyone: rural peasants, city artisans, warriors, and intellectuals alike. Its core ideas, renouncing violence, self-discipline, peace of mind, attracted even those who could not read the sacred texts, for the teaching embodied both simplicity and profound wisdom. Fascination with beauty and power gradually receded. Instead, people sought inner harmony, freedom from fear and pain, a path to nirvana, a state where the cycle of rebirth ends. In time, many temples came to house statues of the Buddha as an immensely serene teacher, seated on a lotus, eyes half closed. Yet his wisdom spoke, "Do not worship me but search for the truth within yourselves." The Buddha's teaching demanded a rethinking of life and death, an understanding that outer goods are transient, and that freedom and happiness are the fruit of inner work. Thus the mark of Buddhism upon human culture and awareness remained, a call to a luminous path that knows no end and is valuable in itself. If you enjoy this kind of content and want to hear more fascinating stories, make sure to subscribe and leave a like, but only if you're genuinely interested. At the foot of the eternally snow-capped Himalayas, where dawns bloom like rare lotuses, lay the land of Kosala, the world of the Sakya, descendants of the sun. Each morning the air carried the scent of damp rice and fresh bananas, bamboo flutes sang over the river, and even the wind spoke in the language of ancestors. Amid domestic life and grand royal rites, the king's household welcomed a firstborn son. They named him Gautama, and every home among the Sakya believed that with the boy a new son had entered the world. From infancy, Vedic hymns were sung over him. Learned Brahmins saw in his face signs of great destiny, and the servants whispered tales that this future ruler would surpass all his ancestors in goodness. But palace happiness was fragile. On the seventh day, as crystalline shadows of the gods bent over him, his mother died, leaving the infant facing the world alone. From then on, no matter how rich the house or how grand the surroundings, within his life flickered a faint, unspoken longing. Raised in the tender shadow of his father, the prince grew with care. Grieving his consort's loss, the king resolved to shield his heir from every sorrow. He built a high wall around the palace, and inside created a perfect garden, a haven of beauty and joy where no trace of disease, suffering, or old age could be found. Fountains sang day and night, carefully nurtured trees gave shade and heat, and only the most brilliant flowers grew in the beds. Servants guarded that the prince encountered only well-dressed, joyful people. Talk of misfortune or death was strictly forbidden. Gautama's childhood was like an endless spring dream. He learned music from the court's finest musicians, heard tales of former Sakya heroes, trained with bow and sword, yet meditation and scholarship alternated with athletic training and dance. Every morning he would worship at the temple of the sun. Each day Gautama, accompanied by learned Brahmins, brought offerings to the light and lit incense, while his father taught him the duties of a ruler: protect the people, be just, know no weakness or submission. Yet in his soul a quiet sadness grew, at first unconscious, dimmed by happiness but never extinguished. In evenings, when the palace garden fell into cool shadow, Gautama sometimes caught in his father's eyes not joy, but anxious sorrow. He would frequently ask, "Father, why will mother not return?" The king would silence for a long time before answering, "All things come and go, even the brightest star. But while you live, your life shall be filled with light." The world of the Sakya seemed immutable, perfect, and forever. Yet deep in the boy's heart he already sensed, beyond the walls exists another realm where happiness is not always near, and life is not always predictable. In youth Gautama passed his days to the sound of temple bells and the rustling palms in the palace gardens. His time was scheduled. Dawn began with hymns to the sun, then lessons in calligraphy, song, and poetry, followed by training in martial arts and meditation. He was taught by the finest Brahmins and warriors, each offering him a portion of their faith and knowledge. From the palace tower he would gaze upon wide fields, evening mirages over the river, distant lines of forest beyond whose trees lay unknown worlds. To protect him from the anxieties and darkness of human existence, the king commanded servants to maintain the illusion that life everywhere was gentle and full of harmony. When dancers or wandering musicians came, they were strictly vetted, No sorrow, only joy and celebration allowed. Gautama listened eagerly to tales of solar heroes, delighted in clever fables and practiced writing mystic symbols in the air. Yet in solitude, whether in the library or the garden pavilion, something elusive crept in. Amid evening bird songs, he could not shake a longing that neither gold nor grand feasts could fill. His father often reminded him, "You are the future ruler, you must preserve peace in your soul as spring preserves the seeds of summer." He insisted that fate for the noble is set before birth, and that care for the people is a heavy, though luminous, mission. By that time, Gautama had begun to take interest in spiritual practices. He watched Brahmins sitting for hours before the sacred fire reciting ancient mantras, praying for harvest, forgiveness, protection. Under their influence, he tried to focus his mind, to plunge into his own thoughts, to detach from everyday vanity that disturbed inner quiet. At times he dreamed strange dreams. He wandered among clouds, floated down a river in search of deeper truth, or he saw his mother leaning over him, speaking words he could not recall on waking. Back in the waking world, he strove not to show his unease. Faith and order in the palace brooked no talk of sorrow or doubt. But a first spark of doubt had already kindled. Why are all days equally joyful? Does this peace last forever? He asked in half whispers to father, to tutors, to himself. Yet in return he always heard calm certainty, "Joy is here because we deserve it. The rest is a forgotten world beyond the walls." Still, Gautama's intuition daily whispered, the true meaning of life offered itself not in the palace's gold, but somewhere beyond, where the human heart meets pain and real joy. One morning, when the garden smelled of currants and ripe mangoes and the air rippled with the wings of white herons, an event occurred that would forever change Gautama's outlook. On the far side of the garden, the wall was old and in places cracked from heavy rains. Some stones had fallen, leaving a gap through which a gray road could be glimpsed, stretching out into the fields. On that day Gautama was walking with his servant. Pausing near the wall, he noticed the crack, a small window into the world he had never known. Unnoticed by his servant, the boy approached the opening and peered through, halting. Along the road walked a stranger, his steps slow, spine bent, carrying a burden invisible to the eye. "Who is that?" Gautama quietly asked, never taking his eyes from the old man. "He is an elder," replied the servant, attempting indifference. "Why is he bent?" the boy wondered, never having seen anything like it in the garden or palace. "He is old," said the servant at last, nervously adjusting his tunic. On Gautama's face appeared a wrinkle, a subtle, barely visible crease, yet real. His soul trembled with an unknown fear. Could I ever grow like that? Is change inevitable even for the happiest? The servant held silence, remembering the king's injunction not to speak of grief or pain. But Gautama's curiosity was now unstoppable. Returning to the palace, he could not erase from memory the bent figure and the heavy steps beyond the wall. For the first time he thought, the world is larger than I was shown. Beyond the walls lie not just legends and sunlight, but truth about human fate. In those days Gautama sought more and more chances to approach the wall, to peer through, to listen to sounds from outside. In his mind restless questions formed. Do all people grow old? Is there a way to escape suffering? Is light concealing shadow behind it? At night he remained alone in his chambers, seeking answers among memories of childhood, prayer and the harmonious temple bells. But no Brahmin or tutor could explain the nature of change or the root of suffering. From that moment, Gautama could no longer live as before. His soul yearned to go beyond illusions and his heart longed to discover the full truth. The gap in the wall became his symbol, a symbol of awakening, the first step beyond the confines of his gilded prison. A few days after Gautama first saw the bent figure, the valley heard sad news. A funeral procession entered the city, people carried a casket on their shoulders. Women wept, men stepped with solemn dignity, their eyes filled with grief. Gautama, hearing lament and cries, ran to the palace terrace and called to his servant. "What is happening? Who is this?" "They are bringing someone who died," replied the servant, hesitating. "Will I too one day die?" whispered the boy, his eyes full of tears. The servant drew back quietly, obeying the king's prohibition to speak of things that might trouble the prince's heart. For the first time, doubt and distress gripped him deeper than ever before. At dusk Gautama went again to the wall. There he saw a man afflicted with leprosy, ringing a small bell to warn people away, his face ravaged by suffering, his voice a harsh buzzing. "Who are you?" asked Gautama. "I am a leper," answered the man. "I ring so people know to stay away. Many years I have not heard a human voice." Deep compassion overwhelmed the prince. He wept, and the boundaries of palace life dissolved into a mist of human suffering. The world, full of pain, called him, and the prince walked toward it. This marked the beginning of his great journey, fleeing the palace, seeking truth amid poverty, illness, sorrow, and hope. Leaving his ancestral palace, Gautama embarked on a long and difficult pilgrimage beyond the borders he had never before seen. His clothes no longer shone with gold, they became plain, devoid of luxury. Though born of noble lineage, he fearlessly entered the homes of the poor, where cries of grief and moans of the sick echoed. Buddha became a willing assistant to healers. He gave water to the sick, washed wounds, listened to their accounts, held their hands. For the blind he was a guide, for the dispossessed, support. His heart felt no disgust even toward the Chandala, the outcasts who lived upon refuse and whom others looked upon with contempt. One day, begging alms, he arrived at the capital of Magadha, where the king, seeing him in simple, but noble and dignified, guise, ordered the youth brought to his quarters. But the youth in mendicant robes vanished before the courtiers arrived. They searched long until a shepherd led the king to his mountain hut. Thus a new era began, the era of Buddha, a man who renounced wealth and palace life for truth, enlightenment, and liberation from suffering. Having abandoned the human world and all its luxuries, Gautama settled in forest solitude beneath ancient trees. Among them stood a sacred fig tree, the Bodhi tree, the place destined to become the arena of his most profound inner battle. Beneath its vigilant foliage, where the whisper of leaves blended with the wind's song, Buddha sat in deep meditation. He locked within his consciousness, striving to discern the nature of suffering and the path to its cessation. 7 nights and days passed as if in a single breath. Ideas sprouted in his mind, delicate yet weighty. The essence of life, the doctrine that human nature is a domain of suffering, but one where each pain can be transcended, passion and fear overcome. At that moment appeared his adversary, Mara, the spirit of illusion. He surrounded him with scented gardens, sumptuous wealth, and pleasures meant to test his resolve. He offered seductive daughters, promises of power and glory. "Renounce your quest," he whispered. "These daughters will bring you joy, beauty, comfort, greatness." But Buddha answered firmly, "Beauty of the body is fleeting, truth is eternal. Judge not by outward appearance but by the heart. Only a soul pure can free itself from suffering." Depleted by the force of truth, Mara withdrew. Buddha sank deeper into meditation. A fire kindled in his heart, and along with it he opened the path to nirvana, a state of absolute peace and release. After enlightenment, Gautama traveled across towns and villages, spreading his teaching to all castes and backgrounds. His message was simple and rhythmic. Not one's birth defines a person but one's conduct. Not God's but good deeds bring benefit. The first disciples came, 6 men who renounced their former lives in pursuit of truth. Around Buddha they gathered, learning to renounce falsehood, greed and violence. They believed the path to nirvana lay in cleansing the soul of longing and desire. Buddha taught awareness of suffering and conscious release from desires as keys to peace. He prohibited killing even the smallest creature, refused wealth, and lived only on alms. Early followers fasted and walked barefoot, serving as living examples of devotion. They washed wounds, guided the blind, shared food with beggars and the needy. As Buddhism began to challenge traditional authorities and the caste system, its adherents soon faced resistance. The people, hungry for justice and deliverance from suffering, supported Buddha, but high castes and Brahmins regarded the new doctrine as a threat to their power. Disputes, bans, even persecutions occurred. Despite these challenges, the teaching continued to spread, drawing ever more people. Its words resonated in villages and cities. Simple language became a bridge between ancient wisdom and everyday life. Buddhism evolved into a phenomenon transcending caste and language. Those oppressed by the old system felt that change was at hand. Many began to walk the new path, hoping for liberation from suffering through kindness, honesty, and letting go of desires. Monasteries arose around sacred sites, attracting those who sought the truth. Stupas and holy trees became centers of spiritual life. Buddhism spread not only within India but beyond its borders, leaving a deep imprint on cultures and thought. The number of Buddha's disciples grew daily. His message of liberation from suffering and the possibility of peace struck deep chords in many hearts. In villages and cities, conversations about nirvana echoed. Simple, accessible words bridged profound wisdom and daily life. Buddhism became a religion without gods, for Buddha did not deny gods entirely, but held that they too dwell in a world of suffering and cannot confer salvation. Freedom comes through self-realization and inner struggle. He preached rejection of dishonesty, violence, greed. He urged compassion and respect for all beings. His disciples walked barefoot, drank only pure water, stepped gently on the earth so as not to harm even worms or insects. This new teaching, without gods, without rituals, without caste, became a true refuge for many. It challenged old notions of inequality and demanded justice and dignity for every person. Over time, in his later years, the enlightened one returned to the same Bodhi tree under which his truth was born. His eyes, deep and calm, reflected infinite wisdom. Each wrinkle told of care and spiritual journey. His disciples were his closest witnesses in that golden time. With a gentle smile and quiet voice, he gave his final admonitions. My children, do not seek the teacher outside yourselves. Truth lives within each being, and it shines like a flame if you learn to kindle it. Do not confuse faith with worship of persons or things. Let your thoughts be pure and your hearts open. Do not constrain yourselves with dogmas. Buddha's path is a journey of discovery, and it cannot be contained by words.